Hello and welcome to this Unity tutorial on tile maps. Besides discussing how you can make a nice and cool level very easily using the tile palette and tile map editors in Unity, we're also going to discuss a bit how you sort background and foreground layers and what you can do to make your pixel art game look more pretty. Before starting out working with tile maps, you have to make sure that you have the 2D tile map editor package installed. So either go to your package manager and check that this is within the packages in your project, or you can look in the packages folder in your project and see if the 2D tile map editor is inside there. Then you will need a tile map sprite sheet. So any kind of sprite sheet that features tiles which have all the same width and height. And the easiest setup is if you cut out your tiles here, so they have a set width and height, which is exactly the same as the pixels per unit in your import settings. So each tile is 1 by 1 unit in dimensions. This will then conform with the tile map's default settings, which are set to 1 by 1 unit in size for each tile that you place. You also don't have to cut them all out by hand. You can use the slice tool and check here for automatic or better grid by cell size or cell count. And then you will automatically get your visible sprites here sliced. You just have to name each of them, which will help you in the end to identify which of the sprites, of course, resembles which of the images. Now we will need two things. First, we need a tile map object inside your scene, which is the object responsible for placing and rendering, and also the collider logic of your tile map. And then we need a tile palette, which is the assembly of assets that can be rendered as a tile map. So let's first create a new tile map. We do that by creating a new 2D object, tile map, and we're going to use the rectangular one. And here you can see that it is created as a child of a grid object. The grid will define what kind of cell sizes you have and if there's any gaps and what kind of layout you want. So we're going to go with rectangular here, of course. And then the tile map is holding the components responsible for the placing logic and rendering logic of your tile map. So one of the biggest advantages of having a tile map is that you don't have millions of individual sprite objects flying around, but they are all part of this tile map object. Next, we will need to create our tile palette asset object. This is the palette that holds all of our sprites which are available to be placed on a tile map. So we go to Window 2D and then Tile Palette, and here choose Create New Palette. And I will just call this the World Palette. And say create. Now it's gonna prompt where I want to save this asset object, so I will create a new folder in sprites that I'll call tile map. And in here we're gonna save it. We can edit the palette now if we choose the asset object that has been created and choose this button here, edit, or you just go to Window 2D and the tile palette window. So there we choose World Palette and actually do what it tells us here to drag sprite, texture, or asset in here to add to the palette. So we're just going to take the entire thing and add it in here. And now it will ask me to save the assets which are created as part of the tile palette setup. So each sprite that you put in produces a new asset object. And we're just going to save those in the tile map folder. Okay. And then it will create all of the assets files for me. After we did that, you can see that now in our tile map folder there is a lot of new assets. All of these are the different kinds of sprites which have been added to our tile palette. Now here's the fact that I find a bit confusing in the implementation of Unity's tile palette. And that is if we go to the tile palette prefab here, the asset that has been created for the tile palette, and open that, you can see that it also has a grid and that all of our sprite objects are placed on this grid. And these, of course, are the assets that you can see here. But this is not the same as our grid that we have with the tile map in the scene. So we can now choose these and paint on the tile map in our scene. So if I select one of these and choose the paintbrush, I can go and place these here. This is quite straightforward. You simply choose which tile you want, and then with the brush tool you can place them. With the selection tool you can select one, and then with the move tool you can move it around. And of course with the eraser tool you can delete them. Be careful not to touch the assets that have been created. For example, here I have this tree sprite which doesn't conform to the grid, because when I cut out in my sprite editor this tree, it has a different size. I just didn't want to have all of the parts of this tree inside little tiny grid cells. So I can place it as one big tree and don't have to place all of its parts. If I go ahead and delete this tree now, then you can see that it will cause my tile map here to malfunction, and there's a little pink tile now which resembles a missing asset. To remove or change anything in the layout of our tile map, we have to go into edit mode. If you are clicking this button here, you're now in edit mode, and all of the tools up here now respond to the palette instead of the grid in your scene. So be careful if you have this button clicked or not. If I have this clicked and choose the eraser, I can now remove the malfunctioning tile with the deleted asset. And I can also go ahead and change the layout here of my tile map so it responds better to how the tiles are looking. The tile palette editor unfortunately isn't terribly user-friendly, so if you want to edit it to move your tiles around to find them more easily, I recommend to use the shortcuts. Use S to select and then M to move, and then you can move your tile where you need it to be. If you ever unfortunately accidentally move a tile on top of another, it is gone. But fear not, you can easily retrieve it. Simply select the tile asset of that missing tile, and then you can put it in again. There we go. So let's fix the layout of this tile palette to something that makes a bit more sense. There, I think this will work just fine for us, and now we can go ahead and paint our level. For that, make sure that you exit edit mode, or you will continue to mess around on the tile palette. So here we go. I have painted a few platforms on my tile map. Now if I want to have these actually work inside the level, they need collision. So we need to add a tile map collider that will automatically generate colliders for each of the tiles. And with that active, I can now go ahead and walk around here on my level that I created. We can create some background as well. And for this, we can take a tile map and simply make a new one, just by duplicating it, for example. And this one here, then I will call background tile map. And the other one will be the level tile map. The background tile map should of course not have a collider. And here with the sorting layers, we can say which of the tile maps should be in front and which should be behind. We can simply change the order in the existing layer, or we create a new sorting layer, for example here, for our background. Just make sure that the order of your layers, like here the background that I painted, is top to bottom. So if the background layer would be in front, my background would be in front of my level. If it's on top, then it would be behind. Skipping ahead a bit, here I have added a few more sorting layers, one for the far background and for these kind of roots, and one for props, that is the elements in the foreground, the fence and the flowers. And also observe how we can put these tree sprites that we didn't have on the tile map because they were in a different size, can also have these sorting layers. So the sorting layers aren't exclusive to tile maps, of course they work for all sprite objects. If I enter play mode now, you can see here that I have a little rendering error. There's a black vertical line at this particular sprite. And that's something that happens sometimes in the editor, and you shouldn't worry too much about it. Test your game in actually in a build and see if you have the error there too. Also, if I don't maximize here, you can see that I don't have the line, right? So it also depends on the resolution. It is something that has to do with the anti-aliasing and graphic settings in the Unity editor. And don't freak out about it. Test your game in build mode if you have these issues. And usually when you build the game, you don't see it anymore. If you for some reason can't get it to work properly, what you can also try is to add the Pixel Perfect Camera component, for which you need the Pixel Perfect Camera package, which is also usually installed by default. Here we set the asset per pixel unit to 16, which is the asset definition for our tiles. The reference resolution then is 160 pixels in height for us because our orthographic camera size is 5, so that goes from the middle to the top, times 2 it's 10, 10 times 16, 160. The respective X resolution size would be 256 if we are in 16:10 aspect ratio. And then we can also crop the frame to make sure that we always respect the reference resolution. And if I play now and maximize, you can see that I don't have any more odd lines. So the Pixel Perfect Camera is some thing that is quite useful if you want to work with pixel art and keep getting these ugly rendering errors. So summing up one final time, we created a new tile map and a new tile palette, where the tile palette is the assembly of different tile assets that you can use on a tile map, and the tile map is the actual unit or the object inside of your game where you can paint using a tile palette. If you want to edit the tile palette, make sure that you are in edit mode, and out of edit mode if you want to paint the tiles. Then we learned how to use different kinds of layers. So the sorting layers from top to bottom if you want to have background and foreground sprite objects. And we learned that if you have any kind of rendering errors, using tile maps and pixel assets, you can try to either fix them in the graphics settings or see if they even persist in a build. And if you still have the issues, try to add the Pixel Perfect Camera, which is a nice component to handle pixel-based games.